Welcome to another episode of Matt Talks Hemp. My guest this week is Mike Lamy. I had a great time filming this episode with Mike in person at Summit Lounge, which is a private cannabis consumption lounge in Massachusetts. Mike and I worked together at a packaging company in 2021, and this episode focuses on what it's like to work in the cannabis industry, Mike's personal story, and his extensive experience. If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
All right, we got a special edition of the podcast today. We're here in person. Michael Lamy is my guest for today. Thank you very much for coming on.
What's up, man?
Always nice to see you, yes. We're actually at Summit Lounge in Worcester, Massachusetts. It's a private consumption lounge, members only. So there's some licenses getting given away at some point soon in the near future in Massachusetts for licensed consumption lounges where people will be able to buy product and consume there. That's not a thing yet in Massachusetts. So you've got to bring your bud here, BYOB, to Summit Lounge. Come hang out, get a private room, film a podcast, do whatever you want to do, host private parties. But the focus of today's episode is really to just highlight job opportunities in the cannabis industry. Mike's had a wide variety of different positions in different aspects of the industry, so it'll be cool to get his insight. We worked together for a little bit at Kush Supply Co. And so just kind of give some people some background on what you can do in the cannabis industry and a little bit about Mike's story. Jumping into it from finance. So I guess we can kind of jump right into quickly how we know each other.
Yeah, for sure.
From Kush Supply Co. We both worked at a cannabis packaging company. And you started, it was November 2020, right?
It was late 2020, yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
So
yep.
In the middle, right in the beginning of the pandemic, switching jobs.
It's the year of the pandemic, and it was great because it was a remote job, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, cool. So Kush Supply Co., cannabis packaging company based out in California. They opened up a facility in Worcester, so we had some East Coast operations. And so I guess let's just go from the beginning of quickly, like your background and how you found yourself at Kush and what you did before that.
Yeah.
Just quick background.
Yeah, kind of go through the timeline. So thanks for having me on. This is awesome, and it's awesome to do it in person.
For sure.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I grew up in southern New Hampshire. I went out to Albany, New York in 2006. To go to school out there, and then basically went through college and got a degree in finance and business management. So when I came out of college, it was 2010, which for people who don't remember, it was like a year after the financial recession. And obviously someone who's trying to get a job in finance, going to have a little bit of a headwind there.
Kind of tricky.
Finance wasn't exactly hiring at the time. It wasn't widely available, but I was able to land a job. And I was so grateful to get a job in the industry that I had just gotten a degree in that I kind of didn't really look elsewhere or look for other things. I was kind of just like, this is what it is. I got a job. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And for the next decade or so, I played it very, very conservative in my career. And that is like not really taking a lot of career risks, not really exploring other opportunities. Some growth opportunities and promotional opportunities came up. So I just kind of rode that along. Whatever came up, I kind of just, okay, yeah, I got a promotion. Awesome. I'm going to stay with this company.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in the industry for about 10 years. But all through that time, I was a adult use cannabis consumer. I consumed regularly. Most people would want to go to a bar and go to happy hour on Friday. I'd rather just go home and relax and smoke. That was my thing. Or meet up with friends and make it a social thing. So I always, during my career in finance, I always had this like conundrum of like, I'm a business professional, but like when I would go to, procure cannabis from my local dispensary at that time, I always, there was this stigma around it.
Yeah.
I was technically committing a crime. So there was always like, anytime I went to pick up weed or anytime I had cannabis on me, it was like, I'm risking my career. I'm risking my livelihood. Because obviously my corporation that I worked for in finance was not, nobody would accept someone using cannabis. So that was something
very much like still stigmatized.
Yeah. And
use, yeah.
So what ended up happening is in 2014, Colorado legalizes for adult use. And when they legalized for adult use, I really started to pay attention because I'm like, oh my God, like 21 and older, that's it. Like it's not this limited medical market anymore. It's full-fledged adult use legalized cannabis.
Yep.
And I just really was fascinated by the daylighting of a black market industry or legacy market industry ultimately, right? And, being a finance person and someone who's really big into economics and, following different industries across, the country and the globe, to watch something be daylighted and it's like, wow, like this is like literally brand new for everyone, at least in the States, because we know there's other countries that have legalized. But I was fascinated by it, and what I ultimately ended up doing is regularly reading cannabis news, following up on like cannabis legislation as it passed, reading the laws. What are the laws? Okay, it's legal, but what does that really mean? And learning about kind of those ins and outs that you learn about when you get into the industry, which is like, yes, it's legal, but you can't buy it and light it in the store. Yeah. You can't light it outside the store. You talk about social consumption, but learning kind of like the details of what does legalization actually mean? Because it doesn't just mean, free for all. There's obviously a lot of complicated regs that you have to navigate when you're working in the industry. So I just found myself reading financial news for work and feeling kind of depleted and bored and exhausted, and then reading cannabis news and being fired up and like wanting to jump out of my seat after I read 2 articles about a company that just started in this state or that state. Yeah. So that was kind of like the turning point. This is around 2014, 2015, where I'm like, okay, I've been in this finance thing. I'm doing well for myself, successful. Most people would deem successful a good career, a good job, I had my own place, all those good things. But I was excited about something else. There was something else that I wanted to be a part of, and that was be a part of the legal industry. Yeah. So my goal ever since that point was I want to smash the stigma, because I'm a living example of someone who could get up every morning, work a professional job, talk to people about complicated concepts like planning their retirement, and still go home and consume cannabis responsibly. And I'm not, a stain on society, and I'm not like, a criminal, which was always the biggest thing, right? Yeah. If you have this in your pocket, you're a criminal. Yeah. And I was like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, just like the lazy stoner stereotype.
Yeah. So I kind of, started on this, mission to transition my way into the industry, but I didn't know how or where or when I was going to get into it. I just knew that I wanted to be a part of it, and I knew that there were so many different areas of the industry you could be a part of, which I know we'll kind of talk about here. Is like, there's not just, working for a cannabis company and you work in a retail store. There's so many different avenues and aspects of this industry that you can be a part of. So I know we'll kind of get to that part where we talk about, the different areas of the industry to work in, but that's basically
cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate the color.
Where it kind of spurred up and started
the background
started to bloom from, I'm going to move away from this corporate finance life and try to take an opportunity into the cannabis world. So yeah.
And so we are at, like I said, we're at a private consumption lounge. So I meant to say this earlier, but if you hear some people in the background, if you hear a doorbell, it means someone's trying to get in. If you hear someone coughing, it means they just took a fat dab or something. So just if you hear stuff in the background, we apologize, but we are live at the lounge during opening hours. So we're good.
Wait, you said we're at a consumption lounge. So
and we are. Yeah, what's cool about this, we are inside. We can just smoke a joint. All right, so you are at a finance job, not feeling really great about it, seeing everything happening in the cannabis industry. You want to get in. Yeah. And so you start plotting, like, what was that first entry into the space?
Yeah. So ultimately, at this point, I'm living and working out in upstate New York. And what I did is strategically, I applied, kept an eye out for job openings, but then ended up applying for a job with my finance company, but it would relocate me to Massachusetts. And I did this intentionally, right? New England's home for me. I'm born and raised in Southern New Hampshire. But I wanted to get into New England with really the whole intention of like coming back to New England, being in Mass, having a steady income and keep that steady paycheck, but then start to kind of explore the legal industry that was emerging, because this is now 2018 into 2019, like just legalized for adult use in Mass. So I figured get there, keep the steady income coming, because obviously I had a lifestyle to kind of maintain. But then I could explore the industry and not be, out in upstate New York. I could be really on the ground here in Massachusetts. So.
Yeah, and it made sense to go to Mass because in terms of the East Coast, Massachusetts was the first state to open adult use sales.
And that was honestly, the whole, for the, 4 or 5 years that I was debating getting into the industry and kind of making this leap and, changing career paths, it actually was a good thing that I waited as long as I did. Because the whole time I was waiting, I was like, I'm going to miss the boat, right? If I don't jump now in 2015, I'm going to miss the boat of the legal cannabis industry. And I realize now that no, like this is an industry that is here to stay. It's going to be
Yeah.
around for a long time. So like, there's really no rush. But
Yeah.
as we know, like people who know like Denver, Colorado, it got saturated out there. A lot of Western states got saturated. And you're right. Massachusetts brand new, just coming online.
Yeah.
So what I did is I ultimately got a promotion. I got that job in my company. I moved to Waltham, Mass. I was working in an office there. And I found myself almost every Sunday having the Sunday scaries. We talked about that, right? Like just literally pains in my stomach for what I was about to go do the next day. I just didn't want to do the job anymore. So I started to apply to different cannabis dispensaries. And I was going to, different cannabis companies, bud tending jobs, dispensary manager jobs. I just threw it all out there. And I came across a company in Air, Mass called Gage Cannabis Co. And they were not even open yet. And this was their first adult use. They had a medical license and operating, but this was going to be their first adult use store. And I went there for an interview and just passionate so passionate about the industry and the fact that I could potentially have a job.
Yeah.
That the dispensary manager was like, yeah, I mean, you don't have retail experience.
Yeah.
You never worked in cannabis before, but like I can see you're very passionate, very knowledgeable about the industry. So, we'll take you on part-time. And this was going to be an opportunity for me to keep my day job and kind of dip my toe in the cannabis industry by working part-time, maybe like moonlighting, what they call moonlighting, right? But I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm here. I have an opportunity. I don't want to just dip my toe in. I want to jump into the industry. So I negotiated and kind of convinced my dispensary manager to take me on full-time as opposed to part-time. And I quit my day job.
Nice.
And
this is early 2019?
it's summer of 2019.
Okay.
Yep. Summer
All
of
right.
2019. And he says, okay, I'll take you on full-time. I quit my day job. And I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Because you're taking
I took a
pay
43% pay cut.
Okay, yeah, you're the
43%
numbers
pay. Oh
guy.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I laughed earlier because you're saying how in the interview process you were really passionate, and I remember your interview process for Kush. So I was a part of that interview process because we worked directly together at Kush, and so I was just laughing because that was another major thing. Like when you were interviewing at Kush, it was like, all right, this is the intangible is like passion for the industry. Like you can be good at sales or whatever, but like if you're not passionate for the industry, that's kind of a big factor there.
Yeah.
So that's how I was laughing. All right. So no experience in retail, no experience in cannabis, work at a retail store. And that seems like a really solid entry point is like retail dispensary. When I think about, all right, someone wants to work in the industry, like how can they get in?
Right.
Like that's relatively low barrier.
It's yeah. I mean, it's an entry level job. Yeah, part time or full time as a bud tender. Ultimately, different cannabis companies have different names for this, dispensary agent, whatever you want to call it. But ultimately,
Person
bud tendering. Yeah, you're working the retail store. You're face to face with the customer and with the public every day, and you have to be knowledgeable and keep up with what products you are selling because, as we know. There's not just cannabis flower. There's not just joints.
Yeah.
There's so many other forms of cannabis and different ways to consume it.
Yeah.
That it's definitely, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but this is definitely something that when you're working front lines, you have to be educated about the product, the effects.
Yeah. Because people are asking you for your opinion. They're trusting that you can give them an answer.
Yeah.
That's like accurate based on the stuff that you're selling. Like
Yeah.
You're about to hand them.
And I think one of the biggest things, and this is where kind of like there's a lot of parallels that at least I see coming from the financial services industry, is it's with money, it's something that everybody uses, but not a lot of people really know the mechanics of.
Yeah.
It's like a car. If you're not a car guy or a car girl, if you're not knowledgeable about cars, you drive a car every day.
Yeah.
As soon as something goes wrong with that thing, if you don't know anything about it, you're calling somebody you need help with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
With cannabis, it's similar. Is you need somebody to kind of help you because there's really no foundation or starting framework for someone to understand THC levels. How an edible hits you different than smoking it versus a concentrate versus.
Yeah.
So it's just.
It's like a consultative experience that you need to be educated on.
Yeah.
Okay. So like at Gage, you're at a retail store, retail only, so they don't make any of their own products. It's just a store.
Yeah, they're
so
just a
you're
retail
selling
shop.
Everyone else's products in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
What are some quick like pros and cons, or your favorite aspect, maybe least favorite aspect of working in like retail environment in cannabis.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best part about it is you are constantly getting new products from different wholesalers across the state.
Mm-hmm.
So you sometimes could be maybe one of the first to see a strain of flower or a newly released product hit the shelves, which is really cool because then you're kind of in the know. You know, if I'm working at this retail store and we're one of maybe 10 across the state that have this product, unless you go into our retail store, you might not know that this product is even out there on the market.
Yeah. Because it's very hard to advertise as a cannabis company pretty much anywhere in the country.
Great point. Yeah.
Okay.
Marketing is a huge challenge in the industry for sure.
All right. So you see kind of like a behind the curtain of, and you just get to know the landscape
You
of
didn't
the
see that.
industry really well. Yeah, we're sitting on a leather couch. There's a couple burn marks in the couch.
There's only a couple though.
Yeah,
and the place has been open for 4 years, so that's pretty good.
Yeah. As you might expect, some people drop a joint. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So from there, like your end goal wasn't to work at a cannabis store. You know, like you wanted to experience the industry in all the different like aspects. It seems like so you were that gauge for a year, and then we're like, all right, I'm trying to do something else.
Yeah. So, but to answer your question, kind of talk about some of the pros and cons. Some of the benefits I think is getting to see all of the different vendors and different brand lines that come out.
Yeah.
You kind of get a feel for the industry, who's who, what products sell, what products the customers like. You get to, I mean, in my sense is like, I love to kind of engage with people and educate people. So I think the education factor is cool. Like someone coming in clueless and I could give them a baseline, help them understand it at least at a high level so that they could make a decision and make a purchase. Yeah. To me, that was really satisfying.
Okay.
And then the third thing is it's fun because most people in the cannabis industry, I think the average age is like 30, right? I mean, we're all very young in the industry for the most part.
Yeah.
So I really had a family. You know, I had a work family. When I worked in corporate finance, most of the people were older than me. They had families, they had kids. I was younger, I was in my 20s. And like they're all like, grown families, kids, they're not going out having fun on a Friday night.
You're in a cubicle when you're at
work.
in
a cubicle, when you're talking to your coworkers, it's work.
Yeah.
You're not socializing. Whereas in the retail setting, you're definitely, you get to know people's lives, you get to know their relationships, you build a relationship. Like I had a great family there at Gage. I think that's huge pro.
But upward mobility there wasn't.
I think that was the biggest thing. Yeah, I think it was the size and timing of the organization. They weren't the company was early. They literally had I watched them go from nothing in the building to displays and all the equipment to actually run the retail store and storage and decorations.
Yeah, because this is like locally owned and managed. This isn't like a MSO, multi-state operator, big cannabis company.
Yeah. This was not corporate cannabis.
Yeah, like you couldn't. The upward mobility there, like if you eventually could run that store, like
that's a long ways out.
Yeah,
that's a long. Yeah, that's going to be years out. Exactly. So I think there was upward mobility opportunities, but not at the time that I was there. And I think one of the I think just to kind of mention for people who haven't, because there are people out there who have never worked retail before. I think that's one of the downsides is you are dealing with the public. That can be challenging at times.
Yeah. People
come in with an attitude or had a bad day, and you have to be the one that receives it. Those things happen. You're on your feet all day, right? You're moving and grooving, so it's taxing on your body. So I think those are some of the things that you got to kind of think about when you're going to go into the retail setting. Is like it is a lot of work. That's why I have a lot of respect for the people that are on the front lines dealing with the public every day, because I did it for a year and a half, and I know what it does to your body physically, what it's like mentally to kind of do these repetitive, especially when dispensaries are busy, like you get a rush, like you're doing this repetitive task, you're counting, you have to, inventory counts, change everything. So it is, it's not an easy job. He was like, you're just working a register. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
There's regulations. There's a lot of, technical regulations about how you're packaging and handing this product to the customer and things like that. Security. Yeah. It's just like working in a bank, you're dealing with a high value product. So there's, a lot of security measures you have to keep in the forefront of your mind. And so there's definitely a lot to it that I think some people might not see from the outside. Like, oh, it'd be fun. It is fun. It's hell of fun, right? You have music playing, everybody's in it.
It's like a chill work environment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But I think, it obviously, as we've seen in our careers, it stems from the top, right? If the leadership is injecting a good culture, it's gonna it's gonna fall down. And
Yeah.
if they're not, you're gonna feel it. When you walk into a dispensary, you feel it.
Mhm.
I can feel if people like working here or not when you walk
Yeah.
in. You can feel the vibe of the room if people are overworked and like tired,
Yeah.
or if they're, they like working here and they're happy to be here and they can't wait to help you.
Mhm.
You can feel that when you walk into a dispensary.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah.
And so, but at what point do you determine like, all right, something else inside of cannabis, but something
Yeah.
else?
Yeah, I think it was post-COVID. Ultimately, for people that don't know, in Massachusetts, when COVID happened, the governor issued an order that adult use cannabis license holders had to cease operations completely. Wow, med cannabis license holders could still operate as a essential business.
Mhm.
And I think that's something people need to let's not forget that when we move past COVID.
Yeah.
Right? Med companies, med license holders were deemed essential, but adult use was deemed non-essential and had to close their doors for a number of months. So I ended up getting unemployed for part of my time here with Gage. And then they open back up. They're allowed to open back up. We come back. We're doing transactions outside. We're doing all these weird ways of trying to keep the business going in this, trying to, as we're peeking our head out from COVID. And basically now, it's like summer 2020. And I realized that ultimately, as you said, there wasn't upward mobility for me there. And they were just at a point where, like I said, they couldn't offer me an opportunity for upward mobility. And I was at a point where, I needed to make more income at this point. It's been like a year and a half now. Like I need to make more income.
Mhm.
And I knew I was capable of more. Like I have an education. I've worked in other industries. I now gotten a taste. I've gotten my taste here in the retail side.
Yep.
I knew I was capable of more. So as opposed to jumping to another job, I took 4 months off as a hiatus.
Oh yeah.
Best decision I ever made.
did a lot of
I
travel.
recommend everybody go out and do this. Please go out and do this. If you have the opportunity to take a mini retirement in your life, do it. But yeah, I took 4 months off and I like to say stepped out of the rat race,
Mhm.
right? Just stepped out. I
Yeah.
got up every day when I woke up, right? And I wasn't sleeping till noon. It was just like I woke up when I was rested and I sipped my coffee and I started an exercise regimen. You know what I mean? I started running, started by walking, and then it got into running. And like I took care of myself a little bit for a few months. And then I took a cross-country trip with a friend, and we camped out and hit hotels all along the way. Took a cross-country trip for a whole month. Made it all the way to the Pacific Northwest. So again, do it. If you have a chance to go cross-country,
Yeah,
do
the
it.
opportunity.
It's 100%, man. Van life, you know all about that.
All right. And so, did you know before you left Gage and before you went on that trip, like what was on the back end of that?
No, what I did know, I didn't know. I didn't have a plan for sure. No, I took the pause as opposed to trying to figure it out, like kind of step back.
Yeah.
And again, out of the rat race. Forget thinking about a career, right? Kind of step away from that for a minute. But what I did know when I stepped away was that, and I think in working at Gage, I found this out firsthand. There's a shitload of opportunity in this industry.
Yeah.
There is so much opportunity to do so many different things that, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
when I'm ready to start looking for jobs again, I don't just have to look at a retail job.
Yeah.
There's so many other things I could explore.
Yeah.
And knowing that there was more opportunity out there, that's what kind of allowed me to take a break, take a pause,
Okay.
take care of myself for a few months.
Yeah.
And then I came back and started looking for jobs in the industry.
Yeah.
Where one day I come across Kushco.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's interesting to note too. I mean, especially now, like the current work climate, there's an element of like you had a level of confidence that you could get another job when you came. Like it didn't matter
Yeah.
that you could take a couple months off. You knew that when you came back, you get a job. And I think that's unique too. I mean, especially now, like everyone is hiring now. So I'm like kind of in the middle of a similar situation. Like I'm taking some time off. I got everything set up that I could take some time off, put some time to like stuff like this and hemp clothing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know like, all right, well, when the time comes, if I do need to go back to like a job situation, like I'll be able to find one. Like not whether it's just in cannabis and before I was like, oh, it's because like I'm in sales. I can get a job in sales. Like, that's part of getting the job is selling yourself. Like I can do that. But it's even different like with this work environment now. So it's kind of a unique situation where you can be a little riskier because you know there's other opportunities out there.
For sure.
Okay, so you start looking for jobs again, and you see Kush
Find
Supply
Kush,
Co.
Yeah. And because I had been, as I said, kind of regularly reading cannabis news and following the cannabis industry for many years, I had heard of Kushco Holdings.
Yeah.
Number of times they came up.
Company.
They're a publicly traded company, and I knew that they were obviously a holding company, right? And like what was under it. But I knew that name and I knew that brand and kind of where they were. And I saw it as like, ooh, this is like a more like professional job, right? This isn't a small local dispensary, right? With a, local person. This is like a corporation operating in the industry. And then when I read into the details, I was like, cannabis packaging. And I was like, that's interesting. Cause like, it was something that I honestly never gave a thought to. Never gave a thought to it at all.
Working with all the packaging.
Never. And I worked in retail for a year and a half. And it's like, I never thought, I obviously thought about packaging because I looked at it and touched it all day, but I never thought of like working in it or that was a job you could do kind of thing. You know what I mean? And somebody else takes care of that. I don't know. But when I saw the job and saw that what the job was, which ultimately was working with cannabis companies and providing them a product and a service that they need. Not that they might want, that they need. And I learned that as I joined on. And people don't know this, but Matt kind of took me under his wing at this point. He had been working with Kushco for a number of years. He had started, building all of the contacts in Mass. Pretty much single-handedly. Maybe when another person came in and you had a coworker, but at least at the beginning it was just you. Yep. So he basically showed me the ropes of like how to have the conversations, with cannabis customers. And I think at this point in my career, as I'm entering into this packaging world, which I knew nothing about, global supply chain, materials that packaging, child resistant, right? MSDS, material safety data forms. Like there's all these technical things that go around packaging and supplies that people don't, I had absolutely zero clue of that. I was able to learn on the job, but then also get the mentorship from you because you had been there for a couple of years and you had seen and had a feel for the market and what this space of packaging was like in cannabis, because packaging in cannabis is different than packaging in soda, than dry goods, than this, that, so it's a very unique little, and what is ultimately an ancillary part of the cannabis industry.
Because like it's not, there's a reason that traditional packaging companies don't sell packaging to cannabis companies, and now it's a little different because people are starting to get more educated on like the opportunity, but back then when I started at Kushco 2018, like Mass wasn't even adult use legal yet. It went later that year, in November of 2018. So it's like there's a lot of specific regulations for packaging. It has to be opaque, child resistant, tamper evident, reseal, like all these things. So it was kind of unique that there's a specific like cannabis packaging company. And now they're obviously Kush is now merged with Greenland. They're still like a big player in the space, but towards my tail end, we started to see like traditional packaging companies start to be like, oh, we just need child-resistant closures for this jar that we sell to like Jiffy's peanut butter. Like we make way more of those than anyone else.
And you're out of business.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
or you now have a lot of competition. Maybe just, not out of business.
Yeah, but, a lot more competition, which is something I kind of noticed.
That could happen overnight.
Yeah.
Because as soon as those big players do start to offer it to the cannabis industry, that small size or medium sized packaging company that their only focus is cannabis. Right?
Yeah. And like obviously they're still operating as a company, and the industry as a whole is still very nascent, like very young industry. But okay, so then I was laughing before, and I guess we can go into more detail about this now. Like, so it was me, and we had a director, and so I was very involved with like your hiring process and did multiple interviews. And
you were there through it.
Like, okay, packaging experience, like who has packaging experience? Like not many people. So the more important thing was like it was very clear, like from the first interview that we did, that you were super passionate about the industry, and that like after work, like it would be enjoyable for you to be like looking up what companies are doing and what moves they're making. Because and on the cannabis packaging side of things, it's like you need to understand all the brands, you need to know who's connected to who, because there's just like pretty much every other industry, there's starting to be like 5 companies who own 80% of the brands that are out in the market. It's like you need to know how they're connected back and kind of where you need to go to sell into those. So enthusiasm is like underrated, I think, for anyone like trying to get a job in the industry. If you're genuinely interested in it, like that shows.
Yeah.
And it can go a long way for like whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
Whether it like retail is a very easy way to like get your foot in the door.
For sure.
But I mean, even people at Kush, like in the earlier days, like people could come in with no cannabis experience at all, and you get a job.
And there were people there, yeah. Like that was actually something I was going to touch on. But there's people that we worked with at Kushco that never consumed cannabis, don't consume cannabis, don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
But they were project managers, and they were marketing directors, and they did other parts of the company that, I mean, our entire company, we didn't touch. Ultimately, we were non-plant touching, right? We, as an organization, didn't touch the plant at all. But yet we are so tied to the industry. And the other thing too is, like I said, the industry needed. The industry, a cannabis company can grow all the bud they want, but if they don't have child-resistant packaging in a state that requires child-resistant packaging or some other requirement of the packaging, you can't sell your great product. So I realized, hey, this is a need for the industry, is the packaging. But I think you would agree, we both agree, being in that industry and kind of living and working every day, is we both want the sustainable packaging to be leading in this industry. We want the sustainable packaging. And that was something that I grappled with my whole time there is, yes, I understand this is kind of a means to an end, but like, if we're a big packaging company, why aren't we exploring sustainable ways of packaging, right? And that's on leadership. They have their own missions and goals for the organization. I was simply just an employee observing, and
like there were some sustainable options. That's something that really towards the end really started to like,
they're out there.
Grind my gears, and we had some options. We had some sustainable packaging options.
We did, yeah.
Towards the end, so I started at Kush in April of 2018, and I left in October 2021. From the beginning to the end there, like in the beginning, the only people who were asking anything about sustainable packaging was like the small mom and pop spots in Maine and Vermont. Like no one else was asking about sustainable packaging. Yeah. But then fast forward to 2021, like big MSOs, it starts to be like ESG is this big thing with just big companies in general. You gotta prove that you're being sustainable. So people start asking about it. But then when you're like, we got this cool compostable box, like the dye or plant dyes, like, but it's $2 a box. They're like, oh, like what other sustainable options do you have? It's like, that's the best one. Like if you're looking for sustainable. So that started to, it bothered me, that kind of two-sided piece of that. Like people were asking for it, but not.
They want it, but it's hard. It's hard because they're trying to grow a business at an early stage of an industry and all that. But I guess I know one of the things that we were talking about before is kind of like with pros and cons of the job, right? So like in wholesale packaging, one thing I did want to mention, which you said, is like enthusiasm and passion. And I would spend my free time, learning more and trying to find out about other companies and what they're doing. Is that was one of the first times I just died laughing when our director assigned me a kind of task, ultimately a little project, and was like, go do research on this company and tell us where they're operating, their brand lines, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I do this for free. And I was like, this is my job now? Like, and I just thought it was hilarious, right? Like, you're going to pay me to do something I've been doing for free for like 5 years? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like this, I think I got a good job. I think I'm in the right place. Yeah. But yeah, I think the pro was with a job like the wholesale packaging industry, one of the biggest pros is you get a 30,000 foot view of the industry, right? We knew a little bit, at least, about what was happening in Canada too, because we had some Canadian customers. But yeah, just like being really in the know of what was going on across the country, because we had customers in Massachusetts, small mom and pop shops, all the way to big MSOs who had 12, 15 states, whatever it might be. They're all spread out across the country, and regs are different. The market is at a different point in its maturity. So you got to watch it from way up here. Yeah. Whereas, when you're on the ground in that state, maybe you're in Colorado, Oregon, Massachusetts, New Jersey, that just went online. When you're on the ground in that market, it's a completely different world, right? But but in wholesale packaging, you get to see it from up here and watch it all kind of developing. And I thought that was really cool to be able to have that 30,000 foot view and look at it from up there, because somebody in Massachusetts thinks they're doing something brand new, and you're like, these guys in this state have kind of moved past that. Yeah. So
I think that was one of my favorite parts of working there, was like you kind of got insider information. Like a lot of these companies are publicly traded companies, like we were, obviously, and there's barriers around trading the stock of the company we work at. But like I mean, you can sign an NDA, but it doesn't impact, like, maybe an NDA, different ones have, like, you can't trade our stock or something. I don't know.
Right.
Like, every NDA could be different, but you kind of got insider information on, like, who was really operating well and had plans for big expansion, all these new brands and different things, and who was, like, a shit show behind the scenes. Like, maybe they were keeping it together on the outside, but, like, behind the scenes, they were falling apart.
Yeah. And that was interesting to see, too.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you get kind of, like, exclusive information. So that was my favorite part.
And that exclusive information also is, like, we have professional ethics. So that stays exclusive. That stays classified info. Like, we're not sharing that with anyone, but we got to see it on a daily basis operating. Yeah. And it's an experience that I think you definitely, like I said, you don't get when you're on the ground in a given state in a certain market.
Mm-hmm. I'd say you could get that with pretty much any ancillary business that, like, doesn't touch the plant, but just your goal is to work with cannabis companies. Like, there's a handful of big targets, 10 big MSOs that, whatever you're doing, if you get those as customers, like, you can make a lot of money
in that market of cannabis packaging. Yes,
and just 100% ancillary anything though. Just like
that's true.
If you're trying to provide a service,
you get a big account.
Industry, like there's 10 companies that you really want to work with.
Yeah,
unless you do more small batch type of stuff.
Yes,
but so like we had some time in cannabis packaging, but creative services like marketing, sales stuff. There's a lot of red tape around kind of how you have to do that, but that's needed for the industry. Like some creative people who can figure out how, like I was saying before, like if you can manage a TikTok account for a cannabis company, like there's, I don't know of any big cannabis companies that are on TikTok, but that's a very unique thing. Like for some MSO to blow up on TikTok as a cannabis company, not getting the account taken down, like that's a massive opportunity for the younger generation now who kind of grew up with all that stuff. So it's like we talk retail and everything around retail. We get specifically into cannabis packaging, but ancillary anything. I mean, like lawyers, very specialized cannabis lawyers, operational consulting stuff. If you have experience out west, you can come out east and start doing consulting for people. Marketing and advertising, whether in a company or third-party creative agencies. Like, there's a lot available in the space, and it's just a lot of options out there for everyone.
There is.
So you go retail, cannabis packaging.
Packaging, and ultimately now the ancillary side. So I guess the two things I'll mention is that I wanted to mention about the packaging space and kind of being in that area of the entire organism of the cannabis industry, I guess, is being able to see it from that 30,000-foot view, being able to see kind of how different cannabis companies like think, like, why are they making the decisions they're making? How come they're deciding this over that? And like you could kind of get into their minds a little bit of like kind of what makes them tick, so to speak. You start to get a sense for that. But I think another big thing that it did, at least for me in my career here, as I start to move in through the cannabis industry, is the networking and connections that it made from all the cannabis customers we had in Massachusetts and New England. I have people I still talk to. There's a great company, Maine Craft Cannabis, up in Maine, right? Like I still keep in touch with them, even though, because we used to have them as a customer when we worked at Kushco. Like I still keep in touch with them, even though I'm not their account manager anymore. Mm-hmm. They sent me like a little, hey, hope the new gig's doing well. Like sent me a hat, right? Like sent me an awesome hat. I should have wore it, but it's just like building those relationships in the industry and networking, I think is one of the biggest advantages of being part of like an ancillary product service in the industry. Is you can kind of start to get in there and build relationships with business owners, dispensary managers, even people in procurement, because everybody talks, everybody hangs out. There's industry events where people network and know each other. Mm-hmm. Oh, so-and-so from this company? Oh yeah, him and I have been friends for years. Wow. Like, and you start to build your network in the industry, which through that job was definitely one of the biggest things, is the experience of that side, but then the networking I was able to do through that job.
Because then that opens up continued opportunities.
Yeah.
As you know more people, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know for many different things in life.
Many different things.
Yeah. And so that, not necessarily like networking. Well, I mean, I guess kind of like when you decided that you were going to leave Kush and try to find a new job, like, were you set on wholesale sales, or were you just looking like plant touching in general? Like,
So I would say like ever since I had left the dispensary and the retail side, I was always interested in wholesale because I knew that wholesale is really what's kind of driving the engine here of the legal adult use market specifically. The adult use side is just like, it's the wholesale. What's happening at the wholesale level, right? It doesn't, this retail level is here, but it's happening back here. And then obviously behind that is cultivation and processing, right? So I always wanted to be a part of the wholesale side of the business because I knew that that was an important piece of the industry. And at this point, as we're kind of going along this path, I now have some retail experience. I now have some ancillary side experience and built my network. And now I can, maybe go jump into wholesale. So I had built a network. I had been, through this time working in packaging, I'm going out on the beat. I'm going to, cannabis dispensaries like to do like pop-ups at their dispensaries and invite vendors and stuff. I would just show up to those things. And I would just, introduce myself to people and tell, oh yeah, I work for Kushco. But anyway, what's your company about? And try to network and try to meet them. And ultimately what I ended up doing is reaching out to a contact. And I said, hey, do you have any job opportunities with your company? That company was Nova Farms. Is like, hey, do you have any job openings? I said, I don't want to work retail. I kind of did that. But if you have opportunities in like, sales leadership, wholesale, and that person, basically said, yeah, let me put in touch with the wholesale director. And the guy reached out to me the same day. And he was at a position at that point where he was ultimately had started to build the wholesale partnerships with different retailers across the state, but he was doing it single-handedly. And you could relate to this, right? Like he was doing it by himself. Like he's coordinating with his inventory team. He's fulfilling orders. He's communicating with finance to make sure the invoices are correct. He's doing it all by himself.
Yeah.
So he had slowly but surely over maybe the past year or so built a team. We now have a wholesale team of operations people who are dedicated to the wholesale business. We have 2 delivery trucks and delivery team. So like this has all been a slow growing organism. And he was at this point where he's desperate for a sales guy, right? He needs a sales guy because he's starting to build it. He has his team, but he's trying to manage it all himself.
And all of a sudden you
and
come
here
knocking looking
and
for
here
a
I come
sales
like,
guy.
I want to be in wholesale. And he's just like, let's go. What do you need? Like, come on. We'd love to have you. So I had an interview with the COO a couple of days later. I'm sure that during that interview, my passion for the industry came out and that I'm here because I want to be here.
And at this point, 2.5, 3 years later, like very relevant experience in the industry.
Absolutely.
This isn't you coming from finance trying to get like a wholesale sales job. That's
Yeah.
a different thing. Like that you might have a hard time getting as no experience in the industry. But like, okay, so.
Yeah, and having over this period of time built my network, built my contacts, visited and met people from different dispensaries and things like that. I think, partially having had a sales job where I'm directly interacting and trying to go out and prospect and bring on new customers. That's what this job is doing. You're just selling, instead of selling their jars, I was selling our cannabis product, which really kind of excited me because now I'm getting back to what I was here to do in the first place. I think that was one of the contributing factors of leaving Kushco, as I kind of took a step back and I was like, wait, like I got into this industry to be selling cannabis and be a part of cannabis. I didn't leave finance to be a part of packaging, and I found myself in the packaging space. So to be being able to be part of a plant touching company, being able to be a part of a brand that I had recognized and really been fond of for a couple of years now, and now I get to be on their team ultimately. I was friggin' super excited, and I've been there now since earlier this year. A little more than 90 days into the wholesale world, and I've gotten a lot of good experience, and I'm really seeing. Again, we talked about that 30,000-foot view in cannabis packaging. Now I'm getting to see the ground floor, what's happening on the ground, what's happening, out here, literally on the streets, and in these stores and in these different communities across the state. So I'm seeing it from a completely different angle than how we were kind of looking at it before.
Yeah.
So
On a more national level when you're trying to sell packaging to like the biggest players in the country, pretty much.
Yeah.
Versus just trying to get your products now on shelves in every single state. In Massachusetts, just for now, that could turn into a different thing in the future. Would you say this is like your favorite position that you've had in the space?
Absolutely.
Because you're just like going to dispensaries and talking to people, trying to get them to sell your stuff, essentially.
Yeah.
Like,
You're going out, meeting, trying to get in front of decision makers and, trying to get them to partner with you so that they can sell Nova Farms brand lines and brand line products. But a lot of that in the wholesale world, people will talk a lot about reciprocation and reciprocity. It's really just going out and saying, hey, how can we partner together?
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that, Nova does really well is we have a great creative team. They've built a lot of great recognizable brands and people that really kind of latch to that brand. And then they have the ability to be a good strategic partner for companies that might not have all the facets of the organization. What I mean by that is like vertical integration. You have cultivation, you have processing, and you have retail. We have all three of those. We're fully vertically integrated as an organization, but we have a really great manufacturing space at our main hub in Attleboro, Mass. And what we can do, and I love to talk about this, is a partnership they just closed. They did this limited kind of deal with Berkshire Roots, who operate a vertically integrated company out in the Berkshires. What we did is we took one of their strains, I think it was the Orange Chameleon. We took that flower in bulk from them and we put it in our Southie Adams King Palm blunts. And then we sold it as a co-branded product. Yep. So it was Berkshire Roots Orange Chameleon powered by Southie Adams, which is one of our brand lines for the blunts. Yeah. So I thought that was really cool is these co-branded products, right? It's not mine versus yours, it's ours now. Yeah. Right? And so that's what I think Nova does well is we have that ability to manufacture these, in this case, we can manufacture a lot of things, but these Southie blunts is one of them. And we can partner with other companies and start co-branding products together. Yeah. So that's something that I like and I can't wait to do more. I hope that we start to see more interest in that. We can start doing more of that co-branding. Yeah.
Especially as the market gets more saturated too, like that's going to be necessary.
It's getting very competitive. I mean, we're over 200 retailers at this point. Somebody said 250 last night. I don't know if that's true. Wow. But we're over 200 retailers, maybe 250.
Yeah. Like when I started at Kush, there was
132 in provisional, which means that's the wave coming behind.
Holy smokes. So yeah. Like 400. That's too much, I think.
And Massachusetts is not a big state. This isn't Texas. This is not New York. Yeah.
We'll see. But when I started at Kush in 2018, if you went to a store, it was like, this is our flower. This is our single chocolate bar that we make. Like, oh, we make a vape. This is our vape. There was no brands. It was like, oh, you walk into XYZ cannabis shop. This is our XYZ flower. This is like, so to see that transition has been pretty interesting. But so I'm glad you brought up like the term vertically integrated.
Yeah, yeah.
So when we talk job opportunities in the cannabis space, you like retail store, obviously vertical integration, like you said, is you're doing everything. Like you're growing the product, you're processing it into whatever you're going to make, and then you're going to sell it in the retail store. So that whole process, like there's a lot of job opportunities in that as well. In terms of even if you have no experience in the industry, like you can get a job trimming flower in the production facility. That's like an entry-level job, and that's something where if you do well at that, you trim nice flower and you're consistent and you're enthusiastic about the job, like there's upward mobility inside of that production facility because they're not only harvesting it, but there's people growing weed. Like that's something that you can have experience growing weed without ever working at a cannabis packaging company. So like if you just messed around and were curious in your backyard and like you grew some plants or in your basement or whatever, like you can get a job as like an entry-level cultivation technician. Like there's the cultivation and everything that comes with that, processing the flower, labs like extracting oils. So I mean people with like you need to really know chemistry to do those types of things at a high level. So it's like you can come out of college with a chemistry degree, get an entry-level job at a cannabis lab and like find where you fit in and where you can provide value. You like cooking stuff, you like baking, like okay, there's a job for you there. Like,
hey, our kitchen director, who's come out with some really unique products at Nova, he's lifetime, like worked in, I don't even know, maybe not hundreds of kitchens, but you know what I mean? Like worked in kitchens his whole life, like worked the food service his whole life. Like he knows how to run a kitchen. And now he's been able to kind of combine his passion for cannabis and be a part in leading Nova's kitchen team. Yeah. So
it's like
all the different edibles. So
with any new industry, there's going to be like not everyone's going to come over. Like not everyone who's ever like a good chef or whatever isn't going to want to get into the cannabis industry. So it's like if you're a decent chef, you can get into the cannabis industry or just like bake or anything, like any food or
whatever.
You can get into the industry, get relevant cannabis industry experience doing what you're doing, and then like in 5 years, you could be running some brand for some big MSO, like making way more than you could ever have made, like running a restaurant in the city that you live in or something.
Yeah.
Like there just inherently is more opportunity because of
exactly.
the like level of where the industry's at.
It is.
So it's like really whatever you're doing, if you're into finance and like you like accounting, you can you can do that at a cannabis company, and your track to eventually becoming a CFO, in my opinion, is sped up very much.
Depending on the size of the company, right?
But you can just bounce around. Like if you're good at the job and you're like enthusiastic, like you can go from one job, entry level accountant, the next one.
The upper mobility is definitely 100%.
It's like there's
the
like
ability
you said,
to kind of climb and move because almost all these companies are startups.
Yeah, and you just said there's 134 licenses in Massachusetts, provisional licenses.
coming.
So those are the ones who have been like, yeah, you're approved. We got to make sure a couple more things are in order, and then you're going to get a license.
Still get a couple more inspections, final inspection and things like that. But
so like you're a director level at one place, and then all of a sudden there's a new place opening down the street, and they're looking for a C-suite person who has like there's just a lot more happening. So
and I've seen that firsthand in wholesale.
Yeah.
Is I literally will have a point of contact at one company, and then they're like, hey, great working with you. I'm leaving XYZ company. I'm going to go to this company now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, they go to that company and they're now, they went from being an assistant manager or manager. Now they're the GM of this company, or they're, at a higher level ultimately. And they literally did that in 6 months or a year. Right. So there's definitely more upward mobility because most of these organizations are startups and they act and feel like a startup, where people who are enthusiastic, people who are performing well, people who are putting in the effort, are obviously going to get noticed much easier than when you're working for a big machine, a bigger organization.
Yeah. Pros and cons to like working at a small place, a big place too. But
I think the point is that like all of these are startups, right? Because it's cannabis.
Yeah.
We're all startups at some point. So
they're like 10 years old.
Yeah. It doesn't matter that it's been legal in this state forever. If it just went off in New Jersey, these companies are, learning. Yeah. They're learning every day.
So for someone who was maybe in a similar situation to you, where they want to get into the industry but like haven't made that jump yet, do you have any specific actionable advice that for like the person in that type of situation?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, the first thing is that whatever you're scared of, it's not real. It's like, it's smoke and mirrors, because that was the biggest thing. I was so fearful. I had I was so worried that like if I gave up my current job, which I had, a really solid salary, I was making good money, I had really good benefits with my company and all the things you kind of want to feel stable and financially stable and just stable. Like I was so nervous that if I took the leap, like I would end up like, being homeless. Like I wouldn't make it or something like that. And it's just like the worst case scenario, right? Like I'll work for a cannabis company and the feds will come down and haul us all off to jail or something like whatever the worst case scenario could be. Yeah. That's what I would think if I made this leap. And then I took the leap and I realized this is the best decision I ever made. So if you want to do it, I'd say do it. And I'd say like it's kind of like when you come out of college and you get your first job, right? If you're going to change careers and jump into the cannabis industry, number one, feel free to dip your toe in the way that I didn't, right? Like if you have a full-time job, I worked with people who, hey, moonlight, work a couple days a week part-time for cannabis dispensary while maintaining your current day job, and see if you like it. See if you really want to be a part of it. And that's one way to kind of, dip your toe in. And then the other thing is that what I was going to say about kind of coming out of college and getting your first job is, if you come out of your current industry and you jump into cannabis, your first company that you work for and the first job you have doesn't have to be your end all be all. This could be your first starting point. And as you can see, living example right here, like it could take you in different places. So
from 3 years retail store,
3 years, now sitting in a cube in finance, to working wholesale for a what I refer to as a regional MSO, because we're here in the New England area operating, but working for a small private plant touching company. I'm literally living the dream right now. I'm living the dream, man.
Like a job you're really excited about. So that's the whole thing too. It's like you can
no Sunday scaries at all. Zero. Have not. I don't even know what those are.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you can enter the industry with the plan to like I'm gonna stay here for a year and then go do something else. Like I don't think there's any problem with that now. Like everyone's very comfortable with that in our generation. Like before, it was, you get a job, you stay at this company forever.
You point out something really interesting, which is I was always afraid that if I made the leap to cannabis and it didn't work out, that if I tried to go back to finance, it'd be like, well, what were you doing for? Oh, you're in cannabis. Oh, we don't want you, right? Because we don't approve, right? Exactly. Yeah. So like that was one of my fears is that I could do it, it doesn't work out, and then I try to go knock on the door of a finance company, and they're like, right? We don't want you anymore because we don't want to be a part of that, or whatever for whatever reason they disapprove. Yeah. So I was always worried about that, and again, like now that I'm here,
won't ever have to.
I'm never going back. Yeah, I hope you all retire on time. Good luck.
Yeah.
Give me a call if you have questions. I'll give you advice. But the industry. I'm here to stay. It might not be wholesale, right? It might not be. Yeah. It might be something else that I end up doing. But at the end of the day, like this is the industry I'm in. Yeah. I'm here for it. Yeah, I'm gonna be in this industry my entire career, I think. Yeah.
Like if you look at the alcohol industry, it's what the cannabis industry is gonna look like. The regs around consuming it.
The regs
around consuming it is going to be different.
In certain
terms of like, there's going to be Bud Light of cannabis nationwide. There's going to be like Lawson's, Sip of Sunshine, craft stuff that you can find. Like there's going to be both. That's going to be what the.
You're gonna taste this Blue Hawaiian here?
Maybe once.
Blue Hawaiian from a company called Trade Roots.
There you go. The next kind of aspect that I just want to quickly talk about is. Obviously, with all your passion for the industry, you make a lot of content around, I'd say mostly Massachusetts. You'll do some stuff up in Maine and stuff too, but you make a lot of content under Cannabis Views. That is, what's your ideal audience for that? Like consumers who are in Massachusetts who are curious to learn more about the landscape of the industry in Mass?
Yeah, I mean, can I talk about kind of the history of it a little bit?
Yeah.
So the way it started is it actually started as Cannabis News.
Yeah.
And because I was always, as I said before earlier, is like I always was reading cannabis news and keeping up on new companies and industry developments. So I started kind of doing like bits on this page that I created a separate page for my Insta profile, my personal Insta profile, Cannabis News. And I would like kind of give you a little quick and skinny little short of what's happening in the industry. And I found that like some people liked it. Right? It was cool, but like I felt as though I was trying too hard to do something that I wasn't really like. I'm not a news anchor, so what am I doing? But I wanted to share knowledge about the industry. I wanted to again smash that stigma by making it common to see news updates from cannabis, and I saw other versions of this out there. But then during my I'll pull this back is during my cross country trip in 2020. Going cross country when I landed in Washington was the first legal state I touched. And I got there and I said, I'm going to go to dispensaries and I'm going to take my Instagram page with me. And I would walk into dispensaries and say, hey man, do you mind if I take some like photos and videos in here? And 9 times out of 10, they were like, I don't like, everybody in Colorado's chill, right? They're like, or Washington, that whole region, they're just like, sure. Like they literally did not care. And I was like, cool, man, I'll tag you on Insta. And they were like, yeah, thank you, right? Because people want that promotion. And what I realized is as I ended up going to 13 or 14 dispensaries across Washington, Oregon, and then Colorado during that cross-country trip, is that cannabis companies need marketing. They want to get their brand out there and they want people to learn about them and their store and their products. But there's very, very limited ways to market your brand. So here in the state of Massachusetts, so then, my cross-country trip's over, I come home. And here in the state of Massachusetts, you're pretty much limited to billboards. Of course, that's why if you drive through Massachusetts now, most billboards are just littered with great content, and that is cannabis promotions and cannabis companies advertisements. And this exit, I love this one, Cannabis Connection out in Westfield, Mass. Their billboard says we're 420 yards off of the exit.
Yeah, I hope that's accurate.
Who figured that out? I don't know.
I hope
but
not.
Just a way to advertise and like something kind of silly. But I love it. I love seeing the billboards. I said I used the word littered. I probably shouldn't have. Like I love to see it. I love seeing billboards everywhere. But this is really your only way to market yourself. So I said, all right, Cannabis News turned into Cannabis Views. And I said, it's going to be a view into the legal industry in New England. And then I said, and beyond, for where else, this Cannabis Views might go. But with the sole intent of basically going out and doing a dispensary tour, showing you what it's like to visit that dispensary, giving a little kind of sneak peek and a little, trailer, if you will, and a promo, so that people can learn about the new cannabis companies that are out here. If you live in Boston, you might have no idea about Hecka out in Westfield, Mass, right? Like if you live in Northampton, you might not know anything about Trade Roots, which is out in Wareham over near the Cape. So it's just like, you know what I mean? So it's like by going out and driving across the state and visiting different dispensaries everywhere, I'm giving people a sense of like, who's out here? Oh, what's that one? Maybe I'll go to them next time I'm in Westfield, next time I'm in Boston, whatever it is. Yeah. So it really just became a channel in my Insta page dedicated to giving cannabis companies a place to market themselves and a place, right? This is another billboard, if you will, and a billboard that obviously works well. Yeah.
Yeah, that people like, there's some companies that are doing a decent job on social media. It's difficult though. And it's like some places I've seen, it's like kind of hands off. They won't even really touch the social side of it because they've gotten their account taken down 3 times and they're like, yo, all right, we're all done trying to do that until regs change.
And that actually helped, I think, the growth of my Insta page here is because I recognize that. Is companies they're a little cautious to, have somebody break out their product, show the actual product and then smoke it and light it. Yeah. Right? Like I just did. Yeah. Right? They're very hesitant to do that because Instagram is very, very, just sporadic. There's no rhyme or reason for why they shut down legal cannabis companies' pages, but they do it. And it's so random. Like it's just, there really is no clear, like you did this. This was the rule that you shouldn't have done this piece right here. Yeah. It's not clear. It is so general as to why they have shut off your account or shadow banned you or whatever. So I said, okay, well, my page, like, I'm kind of willing to risk it a little bit more. Like, I'm not the cannabis company, right? And when I'm on that page, I'm outside of work. I made sure to kind of keep that clear with my organization, right? During my daytime and my daily operations, I work and I represent Nova Farms. During my free time, I am my own individual person, and I'm operating this page called Cannabis Views. I made that clear with my company when I hired on, and they said, absolutely, we love your page. We want you to have your individuality, like do your thing. Yeah. We get it. So I keep kind of those two worlds separate, if you will.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like to wrap up and talk about like just the general theme of the conversation. Yeah. Making content, that's something that can help you get a job. Like if you make some cool videos for a company, and you're actively maybe trying to find a job as well, like there's a balance there, but like Nova, like you doing that at Nova, I think is only like a pro. Like, there's a benefit. Yeah. Because every now and then you're going to talk about their products, and
I'm always talking about their products. You're on this talking about their products all week long. Yeah, like hey, we got to rep. Yeah. We got to rep it.
So it's just there's a lot of opportunities out there.
But I just want to say that because I didn't want to talk about the page until we got to the point of talking about Cannabis Views. But during one of the things I said about getting the job and getting in with Nova, part of it was obviously my network and my enthusiasm. But I think that my page actually did help contribute because the person who was interviewing me, he clearly said, you're going out here and you're making an effort and you're doing it and you're taking the initiative to go out and do this on your own. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and that really kind of is what kind of caught, I don't know if it solidified it for him, but I think it was really caught his attention is like, you're already out here going after it and doing this and starting this thing just on your own free time and your own free will. Yeah. And that I think did contribute to me being able to join the team. So
there you go.
Happy to be a part of it. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's a good place to wrap up, I think.
Absolutely, man.
Just as a general theme, like a lot of opportunity. You've seen a lot of things. If anyone has any questions about working in the cannabis industry, reach out to Mike, reach out to myself.
Yeah,
happy to answer questions about this type of stuff. Thank you for coming on. If you have any closing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, shameless plug, like Nova Farms. We're in over 150 retailers across the state, so you can check us out on your local dispensary shelves. We have 2 going on 3 dispensaries, so we're main hub in Attleboro, Massachusetts. We also have a retail store in Framingham, and then you can also check out Nova Farms coming this summer to Drake, Massachusetts. We're going to be operating a retail store there as well. So we'll be right there near the New Hampshire border, right there in northern Mass, and start getting acclimated to the northern Massachusetts community. So check us out coming soon.
Yep.
And then if you want to follow my page to see dispensary tours and see product reviews, it's Cannabis Views on Instagram. So
I'll put that on the
we can put that on
video as
for
well.
For sure.
And then as we sit here and film this, last night Rhode Island approved adult use. You'll be able to catch Nova Farms products in Rhode Island soon.
Absolutely,
So,
thank you.
All over New England.
Helping me out there.
Pretty soon.
Rhode Island too. Absolutely.
Shout out to Summit. I mean, great place to film podcast.
Absolutely,
Shout out to Terry behind the lens. And yeah, like I said, we're open. If anyone has any questions about working in the industry, is a little nervous about making a jump, anything like that, let us know. Happy to answer questions for anyone. And thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you Summit Lounge too. Absolutely. That's
For
a good
sure.
call. Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely. Thank you.